Marsha, thank you so much for being on the show. I am so excited to hear about your story because I know, like you said, in your book and what you present yourself, everybody has a story to tell.
Mhm.
The bad, the ugly, and the wonderful, I guess you could say. So, why don't you go ahead and start telling us, first of all, because you're spreading the word that everybody does have a story. Go ahead and tell us what really changed in your life and what story you like to tell.
I have a lot of stories I like to tell. So first off, but thank you. I
Oh,
will
you're
respect your
welcome.
time. I will respect your time. Thank you
No,
so
you're
much for
fine.
having me, Michelle. I deep down believe and know that our stories matter. Our stories matter. They connect us. We don't even have to have the exact same story as somebody else to feel connected to them, because as humans we connect to experiences and emotions and what we've walked through. It's not the story, it's what did you learn from the story, what are the experiences, what lessons, who are you now because of it, like who are you now because of it. And that's been the journey. And I've just like everyone, I had to learn it firsthand. I had to learn it myself as I walked through it. Probably about 12 years ago, I was a parent who was dealing with teen substance abuse that came out of left field, never once saw it even like remotely predicted coming into our life. And it did. And it blew in like a storm and it completely wreaked havoc on everything. I found myself in a space of, the only way I can say it is hiding, getting small, not using my voice, being in the space of, what will they think? What will they say? Also experiencing tremendous amount of criticism and judgment and opinions from others, because our story scared a lot of people. That really what it comes down to is that our story, it was scary. If it could happen to us, it could happen to anyone. And people don't like that, right? We want to be predictable. We want to know what is going to happen. And if I do X, then Y will happen. Well, that's actually not true. And it's not until you get into a situation like we did. And I think that we all do at some point in our life, we get into a situation where we recognize that we actually don't have a lot of control. And we only have control on how we show up and what we do with our lives as a result. So I was very small for a long time until I hit a point that, through a lot of counseling and therapy, that I was so tired of feeling like we were the only people in the world who were struggling. Nobody was talking about it. I felt like we were the only family in the world, which is so insane that I did, but that's what I believed. And my counselor at the time said, maybe you're supposed to talk about it. And I thought, that is ridiculous. And what if it's not? Like, what if it's not? What if I actually am? So it really started very small, like very, very small. I was helping out at the school. I was helping the school with parents they didn't know what to do. And I said, sure, we'll come in and help. And that's literally all we did in the beginning, is we just helped other parents. And I do appreciate the school for saying, we don't have any education with this and we don't know what to do. And we appreciate your help. So we just did that. And over time it grew. And before I knew it, I was speaking on some bigger stages and in bigger spaces and writing collaborative books. Then I came into the space of wanting to write my own book, which I really want to share. Through that process, I was really growing and changing and healing and finding confidence in my voice and sharing a message and still doing it and leaving my kids, like respecting my kids, leaving them in integrity at the time,
Mhm.
because I was sharing a mom's journey, not their journey, my journey.
Right.
And as I started to grow and change as a person, not everybody was on the same page as me. So I had a lot of family who were saying, you can't write that in a book. That's insane. You don't share things like that. We don't do things like that." And I remember thinking, that's why we're in this situation. That's why we all feel
Mhm.
alone. And I'm tired. And I think that's what I'm here to change the narrative. That's where my whole journey started. It was never a business. It was literally just trying to figure out how to change my own story so that I could better handle
Mhm.
what we were walking through.
I absolutely love that because, and I love that you said that we cannot control our lives. That sometimes, you think you're doing well and everybody's all bliss and everything, and then something happens.
Mhm.
And good for you for the healing process that you had to go through. Now, I know that because the situation, the boys were really teaching you something, as a mother. Were there other things, though, in your past that came up to surface with it that you knew that you had to heal, not only as a mom, but also as a person?
What a fantastic question. And I'm going to be very honest. This is open and vulnerable.
Yeah.
Is I grew up around a lot of drinking, a lot of alcoholism, a lot of and it was just normal. Actually, to be completely honest, it was normal. And when I started to see this with my kids, my immediate reaction was, no way are we doing this again. And I'm editing myself,
Oh,
not doing this,
right.
and I'm not living like this again. We're not experiencing this. So that was the first thing. The second thing, and I shared it very openly in my book, is that I was 12 years old when I was assaulted by four boys, and it was a it was a very difficult situation, obviously. And during that time, I spoke up. I put my story out there. I actually asked for help. We were dealing with police, we were dealing with schools. Like, it was a lot for a 12-year-old,
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot. And once this was done, there was restraining orders in place. There was really difficult situations that came out of it. And once it was done, it was like, okay, we're never going to discuss this again. And I just remember being as a child going like, okay, so I must be bad then, right? And that's not what anyone intended. I know that. But again, going back in time in the 80s, we did not talk about these things. We did not even have a conversation. So the reason I share that is because I think it's very important and relatable, is the sense that I was praised for being strong. I was praised for, you know what, push it down, move on, just get on with life, figure it out. And I had done that my entire life. And I hit a point when we were dealing with this with our kids that it was like, this is going to take me down if I don't find a different way of dealing with life. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know how to express myself except scream and fight with the world, because that's what I
Mhm.
had been doing. So this entire situation, and I had actually, I say this with love. I credit my boys for helping me to grow into the version that I am today, who is a very different human being than what she was a decade ago. And thank goodness, because I'm not sure that that person would have survived. I honestly am not sure that I would have ever survived,
Yeah.
because being back in perfectionism, controlling the world, micromanaging everything, making it be perfect, which was never real, it was not sustainable and it wasn't real. And I had to come to a space
Mhm.
of recognizing that I did not have control what was happening around me. I could control how I showed up. And ironically, what happened when I did that, when I released control of what was happening around me, but I took 100% control of myself and how I showed up to manage it, my response to our situation started to change. And when my response started to change, the situation started to change. Because when we're arguing, when we're in a fight or flight situation, it's very interesting. You can either throw gas or sand on an argument. And I was great at throwing gas. Like, I was so good at throwing gas, except that it was burning me out nonstop and not changing the situation. I started to
Mhm.
learn that I don't have to throw gas on everything. I actually don't have to take on every fight that comes my way. And I could start to take responsibility for myself. So I do credit a lot of those changes and who I am today to what I walked through, what we walked through with our boys. Do I wish I could have learned it a different way? Of course, I'm human. I wish I would have never had to do that. But those lessons were valuable.
Oh, absolutely. All right. So, what I want you to do, think about, like you said, you changed about 10 years ago or so. You were a completely different person.
Mhm.
So, think of a word that describes you then, and then think of a word that describes you now.
Oh, I love this question. Okay, so my first instinct is that a word that describes me then
Yeah.
was strong, but with a shell. I had a shell, like I had a big
Mhm.
armor shell that was like, very few people actually got to penetrate that shell because I never set it down. And it was perceived as, she is so strong. She is so, so strong, but I didn't feel a lot. And now I feel very strong, but I would consider myself a very heart-led centered person now. I listen to what I need. I take responsibility for what fuels me. I take care of myself. I prioritize myself. I value myself. I didn't do any of those things before. So I think that is my very first thing is
Mhm.
I am strong. There's no question, but it's not strong as in a shell. Now it's when I revert back to those older versions of me who is like, I can do this by myself and I can figure it out. Immediately, I'm like, nope, we're not going that way. Now I reach out and it's like I reach out to my team, my friends, my connections, and it's like, I know I'm going this way. Can you just help me shift this mindset right now? And I'm open and say it. And sometimes it literally takes 30 seconds. It takes the right word, the right thing to
Mhm.
change it, or it just is a space of recognizing that we're not going that way. I mean, I really understand a lot more about our thoughts, our emotions. NLP and subconscious reprogramming has become a massive part of my healing journey. And I know the power of our thoughts. So our thoughts are only ever replaying the past or predicting the future. That's all they do. That's literally all we do. So we get to decide what they're doing.
Oh, I love your story. All right. So you turned your story into a book
Mhm.
called When She Stopped Asking Why. So, what is the purpose? What is the reason you thought, you know what? I've got to write this in a book?
I'm laughing at myself for a second because I often think back that what I say she, but this younger version of me,
Mhm.
what I was considering at this time of writing it, I have no idea because it seemed
Yeah.
crazy. It was a space where very little people thought that this was a good idea. And I've always had this deep belief that when an idea comes down for you, it's for you. I think that our future
Mhm.
self, spiritual, whatever you want to call it, those ideas don't drop down to you by a fluke. I think they drop down to you because they're available. I think it's your job
Mhm.
to raise the belief in yourself in order to bring that to life. And I felt like the question I would ask myself is what if the worst experience I've walked through could become something that could help other people? What if it could
Mhm.
actually make a difference? You know, again, back in 2017 when I published it, I started writing it in 2016. People were not talking about these kinds of stories still. They were not. The social media was very curated, it was very perfect, and I felt like it was an important message to put out there. I had no idea what it was gonna do, but I felt like it
Mhm.
was what I was supposed to do. And so when she stopped asking why, the message in the story is the sense that my life changed when I stopped asking why. My why is a very strong victim question. I can just say this with a when we
Mhm.
focus on where we're going and as a goal, a why is a great thing to know why you're doing what you're doing. But when your why is coming from a victim mindset of why is this happening to me, no change happens. And so that's where it came from. And I remember taking it to my publisher and saying, I think I want to call it When She Stopped Asking Why. And my publisher at the time was like, no one's going to get that. That's too long. You can't use that title. It doesn't make sense. And I'm like, I like it. And that's what I'm going to use. And it was just very,
Well, good.
I did. And she was like, no. And I'm like, but it is the turning point. I had a gut feeling that people who were walking through a difficult story would get it. They would get what
Mhm.
it meant. And that the title has resonated with a lot of people. So that's really where it came from.
And I absolutely like the title, like what you're saying. But I'm trying to read underneath it.
It's a
But
long
I
subtitle.
have some. There we go. There, I had a little bar like in the middle, and
Mm,
I couldn't read it. But I love it where it says a mother's journey through teen substance abuse and the loving path to finding her clarity, courage, and purpose.
mhm,
And so I love that because it's almost like, you know, when I listened to your story about why you wrote the book, it's like you were in a different place then.
mhm.
But it's almost like you manifested all of that clarity and strength to you after writing the book.
I couldn't agree more. I'm going to say that I couldn't agree more. I would love to say that I knew this is how it would all unfold. I had no idea. I had no idea.
Mm.
I did believe that it was available and I believed that something big was coming from it. And I think this is a really important message that can relate to everybody is that we want to know the how. We want to know what the next steps are. We're like, okay, I've got to figure out these pieces. We never know the how. We don't know that. That's the whole part of it. And if my 2024 version of me now could have shown my 2017 version of me who was writing that book what was coming. I'm going to tell you right now, I probably wouldn't have done it because it would have been too big, too scary, too like out there. I had no idea what was going to unfold. And that's my reminder to myself. We have to grow into the version of us that can continue to hold this and bring it to life. So when you want all of the steps, you're not ready for the steps because you might actually sabotage yourself because you don't feel ready or worthy for the work that you're going to do. I think it's a massive blessing. I did not start this with a business in mind at all. I was literally just trying to figure out, how do I change my story? How do I reclaim some of my life back? And what if I could do something good with a difficult story? Those were my purposes. I had no idea all of the things that would unfold after that. And again, I think that that's a blessing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you mentioned that the NLP
Mhm.
helped you. Can you describe what that means
Mhm.
and why did you decide to become a practitioner in it?
100%. So when it crossed my path, NLP, it crossed my path as a certification in 2020. I was actually in the hospital recovering from back surgery. I saw this, and during the pandemic, I saw it cross my path, and I thought, I think that's for me. I don't understand why, but I think it's for me. I always thought NLP was like, I'm going to say this, sorry. I thought it was, sales and done by people to boost your sales. And the way it was explained to me in this was that it was actually getting to the root of the subconscious and helping you to heal old stories. And in the hospital was when I realized that, oh, wow, I actually had done a lot, accomplished a lot, but I hadn't taken the time to change the story. I had literally just pushed my way through. And the more I started to understand this, our conscious mind, I'll give you a little bit of science for a second. Our
Yeah.
conscious mind is only 5%. It's our doer. It's like our goal setter, the person who creates all the vision boards, puts the plans together, does all the things. That's the 5%. The subconscious mind, which is literally created before the age of 8 years old, is where we store our limiting beliefs, our thoughts, our decisions, the stories on repeat that are running and dictating most of our life. And I started to recognize that, you know what, I did create a lot of change in my life, but I didn't take the time to heal. I didn't take the time to actually change the story at the root. And that was the eye opener for me. So I took my NLP practitioner for myself, not for my business. I just went, I think I need to learn something here. I took it for myself. I started to see that we hold so much in our subconscious that these pieces I hadn't taken the time to heal. There were stories I hadn't changed. There were limiting beliefs that were there. And you can, I don't care how hard you work, so this might trigger somebody, how you can never achieve something that you don't subconsciously believe is available to you. So you can be chasing, right? The goal setter, setting all the goals, going hard, burning out nonstop like a badge of honor. If you don't get to the root of why you don't believe it is possible for you, it won't happen. And if it does happen, you'll never sustain it because you have to work on the root reasons why those limiting beliefs exist. We all have them. Every single person has a limiting belief. Most of the time, it's not even ours. We've just picked it up from other people in our life. And so I started to go down this path. I finished my practitioners. I love the work. Then I went into my master's, and that was just a much deeper understanding of what that was. And then from there, I went, you know what? I think I'm actually meant to create my own coaching certification. So I went on to take my trainers. It was no small feat. I'm just going to say it was like going back to school, taking my master's all in a 2 year span, trying to grow a business, learn how to walk again, do these things. And it was a bit nutty. I'm just going to say it was. And through the process, we've built a coaching certification called Outspoken because Outspoken is it's what I love. I believe that our voices, our stories matter. We have to get to the root of why we're not showing up, why we're not sharing, and change the root of that story. Because again, as I said right to the beginning of what we talked about, our stories connect us. We are more alike than different. The more we can get to the root of sharing that, we're going to build like the human connections that we all are craving.
And I love that. I was about to say that because I feel like all of our stories, somebody may hear it and go, you know what? I'm not
Yeah.
alone. And maybe I can see how she went through it or he went through it, and I can do the exact same thing.
100%.
I absolutely, absolutely love that. So let's talk about your podcast. Oh my gosh. I don't see how you have time for anything, girl. so, so it's Own Your Choices, Own Your Life podcast.
Mhm.
So what is the purpose? What is your fulfillment in it? And what do you talk about?
So this is a labor of love. As a podcast, it's not something that we're like out here making a lot of money on. It's just what we love doing. So back in 2017, about 3 months before my book launched, I was still in this space of feeling like the everything we see is curated. It's like even podcasts were there, but it was like really perfect stories, people who had everything working for them. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I have to change this narrative and be real with people. And so then I was like, here I'm publishing a book. My family thinks I'm crazy. I'm like, guess what? I'm going to start a podcast. And they're like, have you lost your mind? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, there's no way people are going to get on and share something that they've walked through, a story that they've walked through, and how they're making a difference. Because you're an anomaly. People don't do that. Well, we're 670 episodes in, so I would disagree. I would disagree.
Yes.
And I think this is what it is. This show is really highlighting, especially over the last, I would say even the last like 200 to 300 episodes, we are really bringing in stories, the kinds of stories, they're deep, big stories. They're not always light stories. But it's not that just that hey, they have found a way through their story. Everyone I get to talk to now, they're doing something because of it. They're actually like living a purpose that came out of their most difficult experience. So the podcast actually gives me life. It's something that I love. We do one interview a week and we do two solo episodes a week. On the solo episode,
Oh my goodness.
I know we do 3 a week, which is a bit nutty, but we started that back in 2020 and we just have continued. And it's this space of I share a lot of, I would say my podcast community gets the most out of me. They get the real, like in the moment life, what you're going through experience. A lot of it is using the tools of subconscious reprogramming, how I'm navigating things, how I navigate when things go upside down. What does that look like? And it's teachable tools of how can you change your story? Because I really believe that at the core, we all get to choose how we respond to what's happening to us. I know that that in itself can be triggering. And it was for me for a long time too. But I always say when you own your choices, you own your life. You really get to choose what your choices are. And that's what we do in this podcast.
And it sounds like you're also giving people support.
Yes.
It reminded, and I don't know why this popped in my head, but do you remember Dear Abby in the
Oh, yeah.
newspaper?
Oh, yeah.
It's almost, I loved it. And I loved reading her answers
Mhm.
because some people would really have a question about how do I deal with something like this? And I loved her stories and
Mhm.
because I feel like, or her answers, because I feel like she could help so many people. And so that's when you were explaining your podcast, I thought, oh my gosh, it's like a Dear Abby support.
That's awesome. I still remember Dear Abby. Like I'm sitting here going, I remember that. And yes, 100%. The other thing that's really important for me for podcasts is when I first started, the only thing that helped me to create change was books, podcasts, and YouTube videos. I couldn't have afforded to coach with anybody. I was just trying to survive. And so podcasting is really important to me because I like that tool to be there for when somebody's in the early stage of saying, I don't know how to create change. And I've had people say, like, I want to do coaching, but I can't do this right now. I'm not in a space. I'm totally respect that. There's lots of free content for you. And I devoured free content when I first started. Please don't ever underestimate the power of it. It's very, very important because what we put in is really formulating our thoughts and what we're thinking. And that helps to shape our beliefs, which then creates our changes and our decisions and our choices. So it really does come from that.
I love it. Now, is there anything that we did not talk about that you want to make sure that you get into this episode?
We got a lot in this episode. I just want to share that everybody has a story that is important. You might feel like your story these are some of the things that I hear. My story's not big enough. I didn't have as much trauma as somebody else did. Like, who wants to hear it? Where do I even start? There's always a place to start. And no matter what you've walked through, I guarantee you it's going to connect to somebody else. And the thing is that you might also look at it and think, I don't want to get on a podcast and share this part of myself, and I don't want to do these things. You don't have to. But if your story holds you back from being the best version of yourself, if it holds you back and you're hiding in your own life, like hiding in plain sight, then it is blocking you in your life. And so I often say, like, learning how to share the story that you don't always want to share, but it is the one you're meant to tell, can really help so many other people. And when you learn how to do that, you get out of your own way and you stop making it about yourself. And it's been a blessing, a massive blessing.
Hmm. Absolutely love that. Okay, are you ready for the last question?
Yes, spin that wheel.
Let's do it. All right. Oh,
Oh,
okay. So, if you had the opportunity to be on a TV show, what would it be and why?
I don't even know how I'm going to say this, but I'm just going to say it. I feel like I could do a show like Oprah. I'm just going to say this. And
Ooh,
I'm not Oprah. I'm not saying I am, but I feel
mhm.
like I do a lot of like in the moment, coach you through something, help you see the shift, help you do. I would love that kind of environment where it's like, not the Maury Povich where we're all fighting. Sorry, Maury, but we're all fighting on TV. Not that. I'm talking about the people who want to change their story, not to glorify it. But I really feel like that would just give me so much life. I would absolutely love that.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. I think it's more more healing than the other.
Yes, not the other.
I
We
think the
all
other
grew up in that
really.
area. No, no, thank you.
Okay, where's the favorite your favorite place for them to contact you?
I think the most consistent place that I am is Instagram. The
Okay.
easy way to follow and learn more about me is through Instagram or my website. Both are Marsha Van W. I've kept it really simple because I have a very long last name. And my podcast, Own Your Choices, Own Your Life, is the best way to get a picture of what it's like, what some of the words are dropping down, and what I'm walking through. I share it all lifetime. So it's a great way to connect.
And I guess, that wheel wasn't the last question. I'm going to so that you can leave us with what does inspiration mean to you?
Oh, this is such a great question. And let me see what's going to download here for a second.
Yeah.
I actually don't love it when people say to me, "You're so inspiring." And the reason is that inspiration is something that it maybe creates a spark for us of like, oh, well, that looks great. And it looks like something she can do. I think that inspiration is the very, very, very beginning spark of maybe I could create change. But if you're only looking for inspiration, it's never going to move you. It's only going to be the idea of like that's possible and or maybe that's just for her, it's not for me. So I think for me, inspiration is like the first spark of what's possible. I love watching like documentaries and true stories of people who have actually overcome some difficult experiences. But it's just the first spark because the change comes when we actually move and get into action. So please don't ever put inspiration up on a big pedestal that it is something, I'm not saying to you, to just to listeners in general, that it's up on this big pedestal that is like you have to be inspired in order to create change. I actually don't think so. I think that you have to be tired of your old story enough that you are willing to move in a forward step. So, as humans, when it comes down to our mind and how it works, we will always choose the familiar discomfort that we know as opposed to the unfamiliar discomfort that we don't know. And
Oh my.
so what I would say is that inspiration might move the needle a tiny bit, but your change is going to come when you make a different choice besides what is comfortable to you and maybe creating change. So Hopefully that answers your question.
Oh, it does. Oh, I love it. Absolutely love it. So, everybody, if this resonated with you, please share it with somebody else. And again, find change, change your story if you don't like it. You are the
You
artist
are.
of your life
You are.
or the writer of your life. All right, everybody, we'll see you next week.